The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to the author and his guests. The author makes no representations as to the accuracy, completeness, or validity of anything discussed and will not be responsible for any errors or omissions contained therein. This podcast does not constitute as professional advice. Brought to you by Sunshine Legal, Albuquerque's premier LGBTQ legal resource. Sunshine Legal, serving ABQs LGBTQ.
You're listening to Dev Talks, the weekly hot topic podcast where nothing is off limits. Pop culture? Let's talk about it. Polarizing politics? Let's talk about it. Films, music, Twitter feuds? Oh, you know we're talking about it. Here to get the conversation started is your host of Dev Talks, Devin Douglas.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the show. Whether you're listening on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Spreaker Podcast Radio app, whatever platform you've decided to listen to us on, thank you. I'm your host, Dev, and on today's show, we're going to be joined once again by our political contributor, Matty Montez. And we're going to spend the entire show talking about the results, both final and pending, from the 2018 midterm elections. We're also going to be discussing such heavy topics as race and politics and why Republicans support Trump. We have some interesting theories, I'll tell you that. As always, we're going to be playing some music, this week by Cadmium featuring Grant Dawson, as well as Prismo, and I'll be making an announcement regarding future editions of the show. If you're subscribed to us on Google Podcasts and iTunes, you can leave the show a review. Positive reviews are a major help to the show and a great way to let us know how we're doing and just how much you're enjoying the show. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at ThatDamnDevin, especially if you like wrestling and or political talk. And yeah, you can interact with me there, and I love talking to all of you listeners. We're going to be joined by Matty Montez in just a moment for some political talk, but first, a word from our friends.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Johnny Jones from Mad Control, a brand new variety show that we based right here in the Tampa Bay area. We're going all over the place, bringing you the best local bands, local businesses, local artists, local everything. And if you want to be part of the fun, all you got to do is like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, or subscribe to us on YouTube, and stick around because you never know where we're going to end up next.
We are back, and joining us once again to help break down all of the events from the 2018 midterm elections, our resident political junkie, Matty Montez. Welcome back to the show, Matty.
Hey, Dev, it's so good to be back.
So, we talked a little bit over the course of the night on election night, and to say that it was a crazy night would be an understatement. Wouldn't you agree?
My blood pressure was going crazy. It seemed like things were trending one way, and then they would trend another way, and Florida had to be Florida, and it was just a hot mess.
Florida never fails to disappoint me. I mean, the jury's still out, and we'll talk about that, but just the night of, I was sitting there watching the results come in, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like, Florida, really? Like, this is really how you're voting right now? Like, I cannot believe this. It got so bad that I told you I had to turn off the television. I had to unplug. Like, I could not do it anymore. I decided to instead make homemade donuts that night to, focus myself on something other than these poll numbers coming in, because it was just, there was a lot of negativity, especially on social media on election night, about how the Democrats were performing. And a few races aside, we didn't do that bad, actually. We actually did quite well, wouldn't you agree?
Yes, we had an amazing night. I think the only thing is, I think there was some hope among Democrats that there would be such a big secret anti-Trump vote that the polls weren't catching, that every single one of these toss-up races in the Senate and the House and governorship would all go our way, and it would just be a blue tsunami, like Trump wouldn't have any wins, and we would be vindicated almost. But sadly that didn't happen because they did pick up some seats in the Senate in very red states like Indiana and Missouri and North Dakota.
In
But
Kansas?
yeah, but we held on to 2 red state Senate seats in West Virginia and in Montana. We flipped Nevada blue. And Arizona, which they will be announcing later today, we are expected to win there, so we flipped Arizona blue. So they flipped 3, we flipped 2. The Florida Senate race, which we'll get into in a little, is still ongoing. So what was expected last year to be a Republican pick up 8 seats, they ended up only picking up 3 so far. So we held our ground in the Senate pretty well. And when you look in the House, we flipped 37 seats.
We did amazing in the House.
And we have 3 still pending. We took back the House. This is the biggest midterm win for Democrats since Nixon post-Watergate his midterms.
It was the biggest win for Democratic women, for women in general in politics, I think, ever. Over 100 women won their races. Over 100 women in the House right now. That's crazy.
The
That's
beautiful
amazing.
thing is the House looks more like America now. More women, more minorities. They said that when you average the age of everyone in the House in this next term versus this current term, it went down a whole decade pretty much.
Nice.
And
as it should.
Yes, and in the governorships, which I'm personally very excited about, because this will help us with the census in 2020 and redistricting, which will help stop this partisan districting of voting in the states, is that we were able to flip 7 governorships Democrat: Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Maine, New Mexico, Nevada, and Kansas, of all places.
Of all places.
Yes.
I have a somewhat personal connection to Kansas. My boyfriend is actually from there. And and when we discussed the Kansas race, he was like, I hope that they do the right thing and elect a Democrat into office there. I just have no faith that they will. And he was out walking the dogs when the news rolled in that they were calling it, and Democrats flipped Kansas. And I was so excited for Kansas that I literally ran outside to hunt him down and be like, Kansas, Democrats, they got it. And he's like, and I could see in his face, he was really, really, really happy for the state because for once they're going to have someone in the governorship who isn't working against their best interests at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kansas is funny because for the past 8 years or so, they've been doing this trickle-down method where they've cut taxes for every single person in the state, but that resulted in them not being able to make enough taxpayer revenue for their budget. So they literally had to go to a 4-day school week in Kansas, and the 3 other days, they would have to turn off the power and air conditioning in the schools just to save money. So Republicans drove that state to the ground. Now, going into the election, I was like, okay, is a Democrat going to finally win and fix the state, or are the people there so partisan that they know their party has screwed it up, but they're still going to elect another Republican? And they didn't. She won by a pretty good margin, so it's good that they were able to do that.
Speaking of, you mentioned them knowing that their party ran things into the ground or just wasn't good for the state, but voting for them anyway. Can we talk about how a dead pimp won his race in Nevada? Can we talk about that for a minute?
Talk about how partisan that area is, right?
How twisted do you have to be to think, oh, well, no, I'm just going to vote for the dead pimp? What?
And the funniest thing was she still had to give a concession speech. That was the best part.
It's such a demoralizing, thing to have to go through. It's like you lost your race to dead pimp, and he died fairly recently, and was found with drugs and stuff in his system, and reportedly a sex toy in his hand. Like, come on. You cannot tell me that you hate Democrats so much, that you'd rather vote for a. So tell me, because I'm unfamiliar what happens in this situation. What happens to his position that he's now won?
I'm pretty sure they have to do a special election now to fill his seat.
So theoretically she has a chance again?
Yes, if she wants to run again. But, I mean, can you imagine how low your self-esteem must be if you lost to a dead pimp?
Yeah, like I would have zero faith in people after that. But I would have to think that people would see that and be like, no, it ain't going down like that. Like, we're going to fix this. Special election, okay, we have a chance to right this wrong.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I thought that after, all of Ron DeSantis's dog whistles and, all of the mistakes that Rick Scott's made, that Florida would do better. But clearly,
it's still going to a recount in both races, so it's still kind of up in the air. But if we're going off what it shows now, then Governor Ron DeSantis and Senator Rick Scott is like a real possibility. And what I was thinking of election night, was I was thinking about Pulse, I was thinking about Parkland, and I was thinking about all the work and activism that went on after those two shootings. And I thought about how Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis never visited the Pulse site. Rick Scott never showed up to the Parkland town hall they had on CNN. Only Bill Nelson and Rubio did. And I'm just thinking to myself, okay, we've had 2 mass shootings in this state. Both of these politicians have shown they really don't care. And yet they were still able to win. Like, is this how desensitized we've become as a state? That we're awarding people for doing nothing to counteract gun violence, and even visiting the site just because LGBT people or some liberal high school students were killed in those massacres. Like, it's really, I just can't put it into words.
When you look at how a lot of the Florida votes broke down, you saw giant blue spots all over Florida, but largely the state was red. I think that when people think of Florida, they think that it's all, like, literally all of it's like beaches and amusement parks, and it's really not. There are a lot of rural, small towns, podunk towns in Florida, and they're very conservative towns. There are a lot of older people that move to Florida later in life, and they're largely responsible for how red this state is. And you see these giant spots of blue where you see giant groups of youth, usually in our college, major college towns, Tallahassee, Jacksonville, Orlando, Tampa, Miami-Dade, like areas like that. Those are going to be your blue areas, which had high turnout. So when you think about how red the state is, and then you see these like blue little areas, these blue districts or whatever, it just goes to show how powerful the blue vote is. Mm-hmm. Gillum and DeSantis are neck and neck. Nelson and Scott are neck and neck. These blue votes, these little blue patches, they are doing a lot of damage. So
and let's remember those blue areas are where most of the population is located.
Yeah. And it's usually the most diverse areas of the state. You see a lot of different ethnicities and cultures there. You were right when you said that Florida will likely never be a blue state.
No.
There's
too many elderly people coming here to retire, and the Panhandle ever since Trump, the Panhandle comes out in such huge numbers that anything that comes out of Miami or Broward County that's very liberal is going to be countered by that rural white conservative vote in the Panhandle.
Yeah. So I will say, the polls said something along the lines of black women supposedly, allegedly, turned out 18% for Ron DeSantis. I'm not buying that.
No, I don't either, and that's why I think we need a goddamn recount.
Yeah, all of the polls. I mean, mind you, lately a lot of these polls have been iffy at best. But like we discussed before, black women were not feeling Ron DeSantis. Not at all. And now all of a sudden, all these exit polls are saying that 18% of black women voted for DeSantis, and that it just doesn't make sense. Can you rationalize that in any way? How could that possibly have been? Is there anything that could have been done by the DeSantis camp that could have possibly have won over black women that quickly?
Ron DeSantis hardly had any policy ideas in this campaign, let alone policy ideas that black women would appreciate. So I find it very hard to believe that they voted for him by that much based on his policies. Nothing makes sense to me in Florida. I don't understand how a man who can have an ad with his child building a wall with blocks and saying, oh, he's building a wall just like Mr. Trump, can beat a young, charismatic uniter who promised to do more for teachers than any governor that ran the past 20 years, promised to do more for the environment than any governor that ran the past 20 years, small business owners.
I'm sorry. I can tell you exactly why that is. It's because he's black.
Yeah.
Hello. Hello. We live in Florida, and like we literally just discussed, largely conservative state. Likely will never be a blue state. The best we can hope for is a purple state at best.
And I think I was naive because I thought, you know what? Here is a black man with so many great policy ideas and such a good message versus a mediocre white man. And a part of me thought maybe because he's working so much harder than him, that he will pull it off. And once again, no.
Because it had nothing to do with anything that Ron DeSantis did. It had nothing to do with it. It had everything to do with Trump's endorsement of him. The people who won their midterm was because of Trump. The people who lost their midterms was also because of Trump. There were a lot of people that, he didn't turn out for, and they lost their races. And there were a lot of people who he did turn out for, and they won their races. We cannot deny that Trump voters turn out because they're fanatics. Like, they truly believe that he is like some sort of savior. Like, he's like the, best politician to ever live, even though he sold himself on the fact that he's not a politician and knows nothing about politics. He's a businessman, a shitty businessman at that. But for some reason, people turn out for him.
The reason why Donald Trump is so popular with a third of this country is because he says the racist shit that they thought for years they couldn't say. He says the misogynistic shit they thought for years they couldn't say. And because they see themselves in him, they like how he's obnoxious, they like how he irritates liberals, they don't care about anything policy with him. They just like it because he's trolling everyone.
Exactly.
And they want those people to suffer, so they support him.
Exactly. I try for the most part to give the other side the benefit of the doubt, because there are people on the other side who aren't hateful people. largely, I know a lot of people who are, I guess you'd say socially less conservative than most.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't support the language that is used by the right now. They don't support the actions of the right now, and they wish that they had some sort of semblance of the party that the Republican Party used to be, which was a somewhat respectable party. Like there were people, there were some people willing to reach across the aisle and, work with people and get stuff done and not be so divisive. And now it seems as though there's always this coded language with them.
Yes. And like I said, Trump really just amplified it. He put it out in the mainstream. So now people think this is okay. It's really awful.
We're going to be back with more conversation in just a moment. But first, let's take a little music break. Here's Prismo with Stronger.
You stole my heart of gold after my silver soul. Can you dig any deeper now? I gave you all I own, put you on this golden throne, but I'm a little stronger now. You cashed in on my promises, you know I'm too generous. Now I've learned to never help you out, 'cause I'm done cleaning up your mess. Found myself in my regrets. I've become a little stronger now, a little stronger now.
We're back with Matty Montez, and you said that at last count, the likelihood is that we're going to see DeSantis and Rick Scott maintain office.
Well, I think DeSantis, yes. There's something going on with the Nelson Scott race that has me really intrigued. In Broward County, 25,000 ballots, counted the governor's race, but not the Senate race. And they think it could be a machine error. Because I know some people that left the Senate race blank because they didn't like either candidate. But it's very unlikely that 25,000 people left that one blank.
I'm starting to truly believe that half of our country just might be a little racist.
Yeah, and not a little racist, a lot racist.
I don't want to believe it. As someone who comes from a blended family, I don't want to believe that there's that much hate bubbling underneath the surface of our society. But when I think about it, why else would you turn out and vote for someone or vote for someone that is endorsed by racists if you're not a little racist yourself? Because me, I'm the type of person, and I know not everyone's like me, but if I hear something that's really shitty, I'm turned off of it. I'm like, I don't want to be a part of that in any way.
Morals. These people don't have morals. And let me just say, just to push back on something you said earlier about not all Trump supporters being bad people, blah, blah, blah. I just feel like if you...
I never said that. Let me clarify that for the record.
Okay. I thought you were trying to say, they're not all,
Not all Republicans are bad.
Okay, Republicans.
I've dated Republicans. I like discussing things with some Republicans because I think you kind of need both sides sometimes to kind of come to a middle ground and an understanding that kind of benefits everyone. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That said, all Trump supporters are pieces of shit. That's my opinion.
Because to me, you can't look at that and be like, oh, well, racism isn't that big of a factor to turn me away. Or, oh, well, it doesn't affect me, so I'm going to vote for him anyways. To me, that's the same thing as wearing a KKK hood and saying the N-word. That's the same thing to me. If you're going to basically...
Co-sign.
You
co-signing.
You're literally saying that's okay. And to me, the silent and turning the head of, oh, it's not that big a deal because it doesn't affect me, that's just as bad as being an outward, expressive racist. It's the same thing to me.
Because you're basically saying, I'm okay with this existing in my world, and I don't really see any reason to put a stop to it. Or anyone else trying to put a stop to it.
And I have no respect. When Van Jones does those little specials on CNN trying to meet the nice white Trump family in Kentucky and why'd you vote this way? And sorry, I don't really have any sympathy for you people in your coal factories because I just don't. I can't try and make you all the victim when there are literal people of color who are victims out there because of this kind of rhetoric that's out there. I can't do it.
I agree with you to a point, and you and I have this thing where I always seem to agree with you, but to a point. And I say that because I think that you have to hear, at least sometimes, on some things from the other side to understand if maybe there is a way to remedy some of the problems. Because I think that a lot of the time, speaking as a person of color, my biggest issue when it comes to dealing with people who aren't of color, who maybe don't understand what certain situations are like, is when I feel as though they aren't listening to me and they don't want to listen to me. My opinion means absolutely nothing to them. And it's something that affects me, so I feel like my opinion should matter. So if there are people in Middle America who voted for this guy the first time, and I'm just going to say the first time because everyone's allowed to make a mistake once. People who voted for him the first time might have been a cry for help more than anything. Hey, I don't know what else to do because the people who normally run my party, I can't jive with. The Democratic Party, I cannot jive with. Hillary Clinton, I cannot jive with. So this guy right now seems like the best possible solution. And I'm not talking about those people who voted for him because he, trashes the media and black people and women. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the people who voted for him simply because they felt as though as a Republican they were out of options. I can understand that. I can relate to that. When it came down to voting for Hillary Clinton, I didn't feel great about it. I didn't, because I felt as though the Democratic Party was always about Hillary Clinton and not about the Democratic Party, and that bothered me. So for that reason, I can understand where they're coming from. But I think you need to have those conversations. So when you're talking to people who say things like, I had a friend who didn't know that the largest so the people who accept the most government assistance are white people. Middle America, white people. They didn't know that. They believed the rhetoric that was spewed, that it was minorities that were, and they were leeching off the system, and you were paying for some black family's groceries because they're too lazy to go out and work, and that's absolutely not the case. And then she kind of fought me on it, and then I showed her the numbers, the proof, and she was like, oh, well, that kind of changes things. And that wouldn't have happened unless we had that conversation. Now, on the other side of that, on election night 2016, I was sitting in front of my TV watching CNN, very depressed about what was going on, as a lot of the country was. And I got a phone call from one of my closest friends, and I love this guy to death. But he called me, and he was kind of chuckling. And he was like, "Are you upset right now?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like, do you know what's going on right now?" Like, "Yeah, I'm upset right now." And he's like, "Don't worry, man. It's not going to be that bad." He's a Trump supporter, and he's made it a point to rub it in my face. And he was laughing at me. I'm like, "No, you don't understand. This is so dangerous for people like me. You don't understand what having someone like him in power could do for not just people like me, but like people of all walks of life, across the United States." And he just laughed at me and was like, it's not that big a deal. Don't worry. He's not going to do anything to like gay people. Don't worry. He's not going to do anything to like people of color. Don't worry. It's fine. You're worried about nothing. And I'm like, no, you're telling me I'm worried about nothing, but literally everything that this man has said and done throughout his campaign, and before that, leading up to this point, has pointed to him being a racist and a bigot and a misogynist. Like, period. Like, and you choosing to overlook those things for whatever reason, I can't co-sign that. So when I was speaking earlier, I meant that not all Republicans are bad. You have to be a special kind of piece of shit to hear the kind of things that this man has said, see the kind of things this man has done. Look him up. Like, look him up. He has a long, long, long history of being a horrible human being, him and his father. And you know what? It's not fake news. It's not made up. It's reality. And there are people who can attest to it. You've seen it, you've heard it with your own eyes, but yet you choose to overlook it because I don't know. I don't even understand why. Like, after seeing how things have been over the past 2 years after 2016, you would think that people would be like, okay, well, this guy's more trouble than he's worth. Like, he's more trouble than he's worth, and he's only working like 3 or 4 hours out of the day. Can you imagine if he was putting in real work?
He doesn't read his security briefings.
Like, it's frustrating because I want to be that person who's like, you know what? Yeah, everyone can make a mistake once. You voted for Trump once, but prove that you're not one of them. It's one thing to go on Twitter and be like, "Ah, man, he said what? That's messed up. Or to retweet something. But it's a completely different thing to go out and vote, like walk the walk. I can't say that I'm completely surprised by the way Florida voted. I can't. I didn't want to say that you I didn't want to say that you were being overly optimistic, but you were being overly optimistic.
Listen, I'm never going to have faith in this state ever again. And like back to what you were saying, here's my beef with the Trump supporters is we are constantly having specials on CNN and MSNBC to go into their towns and understand them. When has Fox News ever sent people to an urban area and talked to the black working class? When has Fox News ever had a town hall with gay suburban parents that talked about their lives? We're always the ones who seem to reach our hand and give the olive branch first. I would like that reciprocated sometime.
Yeah,
and
I can understand that, but we have to be better than them.
They always act like the fucking victims every single time when they're the ones who are throwing the negative rhetoric out there. It's just so frustrating to me.
No, it is, and it is, and I completely agree. I'm always of the mindset that we have to be better, and it sucks because Joy Behar said it best. Like, maybe we have to stop turning the other cheek and just treat them how they treat us. But we see how that works. Their base will always believe that they're the victim, no matter what. No matter what. The whole Acosta thing, and him having his press pass suspended. We saw, if you watched the day of when all this stuff was going down, we saw the original undoctored footage. Mm-hmm. But what are they pushing? What is the right pushing? What is the White House pushing? A sped up doctored version that makes the other side look bad. If we were to engage in behavior like that, not only would we lose the respect of what little respect the other side might have for us, but we'd also lose respect from people within our own party. We at the end of the day, I want to be able to say we did things the right way. If they're out trying to steal elections, that kind of shit will eventually get you caught. And, if you're out doing dirty stuff, things like Watergate happen, and the Lewinsky thing happens. You know what I mean? If you're doing dirt one way or another, no matter what side you're on, eventually it comes out. So yeah. I feel like if we just stay the course and do things the right way, we're going to be in good shape. Now that we're in control of the House, what's on the agenda for Democrats first?
Well, first they have to all agree on a speaker. What
are the odds that it's going to be Pelosi?
Well, it should be a unanimous vote for her, but right before we started talking, I saw on Twitter there are 10 House Democrats who have come together to challenge her, and they're calling all the new wonderful candidates who were elected Tuesday night to try and get them on their side as well. So only Democrats could fuck up their own victory by then creating infighting among themselves on who's going to be the new speaker.
But it would only be infighting if Pelosi didn't step aside, right? If a nice majority of the House wanted someone else, wouldn't it be in the best interest of the party to go with that? Because it's at the end of the day, there'd be resentment if Pelosi put her foot down and was like, no, like I'm the person who should be doing this. I feel like that would cause more tension and dissent than anything else.
Yeah, well, my personal opinion is, like, when 2016 happened, Nancy thought Hillary was going to win, and she was going to retire after that. Well, then, of course, Hillary lost, so she stayed on. And now she's saying that she would serve for 2 terms as House Speaker, so until 2020, and then she would retire and some new blood would come in. And I just personally feel like we need her right now because she's one of the best Speaker of the Houses in the history of the United States. She's good at keeping her caucus together. And I just feel like we really need a Speaker Pelosi these next 2 years. I think trying to overthrow her now is so stupid. Just wait 2 years, let her keep things afloat, and then she'll retire, and then we can have a new speaker in place. I just don't get why, when there's so much going on right now, we're then going to create infighting amongst ourselves. I don't get it.
I can understand that. It would make sense to, if we do have all these new people joining the House, to kind of let there be a kind of a more gradual transition of power within the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. However, I feel like at this point, what the Democratic Party needs more than anything is a strong rebranding. And we cannot do that. We cannot. And I would say normally I would say anything that I say is debatable. This I don't think is debatable. We cannot come up with a strong rebranding if we have Pelosi as the speaker, and her name is literally like the N-word to Republicans, like to small town voters. Like my boyfriend, his family hates Nancy Pelosi, and he and I sat down and we talked about it, and I was like, can you explain to me why? He couldn't put it into words. He could not do it. But for whatever reason, her name alone is like disgusting to them. Like they immediately disengage the moment that her name is brought up. And how are we ever going to get people to want to work with the Democrats or to come to our side if we're being represented by people that put off a large, inexplicably, but she does put off a large segment of the country?
And that's a good point. I personally feel like it's a lot like Hillary, where it's just a smear, and right-wing media has created a smear of her for years. And we do need new leadership in the Democrat Party. I just personally feel like if we need the best player on the field these next 2 years, and nobody does it better than Nancy. This is a woman who got Obamacare passed. This is what people thought it was impossible. This is a woman who has gotten so much legislation passed.
But did she do it did she really do it single-handedly, or was it a joint effort that took a lot of work from a lot of people? I think we're discrediting a lot of people when we give all of the accolades to one person like that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying like it's just her. It's just she's really good at the backroom stuff and making sure that the caucus sticks together. And I just feel like, because we have no idea what's going to happen these next 2 years. We don't know what Mueller's going to release. We don't know what Trump's going to do.
If he's even going to be able to release anything, his investigation could be starved out.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to make sure that we have the best experienced speaker who's ready to play chess when everyone else is playing checkers in charge of the House. However, I do think after these next 2 years, like we are expected to keep the House in 2020 also. And I think then is when we can have our new leadership with our hopefully new Democratic president then.
So who, for the sake of this argument, I'm not sure if they referenced anyone specific in the article you on Twitter when you were just before the show. But who, if anyone, could step up and be an effective speaker if not Pelosi? Say we absolutely needed to pick someone who was not Pelosi. Who would be the best candidate?
So I personally, what I want is Barbara Lee. She's a congresswoman from California, African-American woman. She stayed neutral in the Hillary-Bernie fighting, and she led a lot of unity commissions, and she's really good at, like, everyone in the House likes her, and she's a really smart, just a really smart person, and I think she'd be a great speaker when Pelosi retires. Now, this group of House Democrats, they're pushing Tim Ryan, who is a congressman from Ohio, to challenge her. He challenged her last time for minority leader, and the rumor is he will be the one to challenge her for speaker this time.
Do you think that maybe because where we, as the Democratic Party, are failing seems to be more middle America, wouldn't it make more sense to bring on someone from, like, say, Ohio, rather than someone from a state that's usually affiliated with, like, elitists like California?
Yes, but I just personally, I don't care about the state where someone's from. I like to go with like the person,
You
but I
know,
do,
but you're also a Democrat.
yeah, but I do get how to like independence and stuff. Like it would look better if you had a nice young guy from Ohio, Midwest to be the speaker. That'd be better for us moving forward in the future, probably. It's just the speaker of the House is not the messenger of the Democratic Party. The Speaker of the House is about being in charge of order, keeping the caucus together, and knowing the rule book by hand. And I just don't know how I feel about having this young guy from Ohio. I mean, look at Paul Ryan. Everybody thought he's going to be the best Speaker of the House ever, and he did a terrible job. He will probably go down in history as the worst Speaker in the House because he couldn't keep his caucus together, and he was terrible at keeping order. So I don't know how I feel about having these young people from the Midwest be Speaker, but maybe you could put them on like a leadership committee or make them second in command. I just feel like the Speaker has to be someone really experienced who knows their shit.
Now, going forward, we have control of the House. For a long time, there's been talk about starting possible investigations leading towards impeachment. I personally think that we would be seriously jumping the gun if we immediately jumped into those kind of proceedings. But what do you think? Would it be a good idea to maybe focus on some other things perhaps before going after Trump?
Yeah, well, in her press conference, Pelosi said that they wanted to put forth some legislation to lower prescription drug costs, and they were hoping to get some Republicans on board. So they do have some like legislative ideas. Like with Take It Back the House, it's not just going to be all investigations, but I don't think we should start an impeachment until Mueller's investigation is finished and if Trump is indicted. I think if Trump is indicted, then we can move the impeachment forward. But even though I personally do feel like there have been things he has done which could make grounds for impeachment, I don't think the majority of the country is there yet, so they shouldn't move forward. Now, they should have these investigations because I think that he's gotten away with murder, basically, with his businesses running still while he's in the White House, violated the emoluments clause. Like, there's a lot of sketchy shit I do want us to look at. I also want us to look at, do you remember that thing last year with the soldiers in Niger and they were killed?
Yeah.
We had no idea why they were there without any backup or anything. I mean, Republicans made such a big deal about Benghazi for 4 years. I want a fucking investigation on that because I think that's what happens when you have a reality TV star as leader of the commander-in troops. Like, this is what happens. And I want an investigation on that, too. So I don't think all investigations are bad if they're done properly.
So, yeah, and so I'm not saying that I thought that the investigations would be bad. It's just the timing of it. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure, because I live with someone who is coming around to some more liberal ideals, but one fear that I hear a lot from him and his family is that they're afraid that the Democrats are just going to end up doing what the Republicans spent the majority of Obama's presidency doing, and that's just obstructing. And I don't think that that's I don't really think that's a possibility. I think that we've always kind of been pretty clear that we weren't going to do that tit for tat like game that people like Lindsey Graham want to play. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what prediction time? What kind of tone change, if any, do you think we'll see from the Republican side after these midterms? With having flipped the House and flipped so many Republican Senate seats, how do you see the Republicans kind of shifting their tone going forward? Not Trump, because I don't think his tone will ever change. But but the Republican Party as a whole.
I think Republicans are going to learn from this midterm that their fear-mongering works really well in red states, and it gets them creamed in blue and purple states. And I think you're going to see Republicans react these next 2 years based on where they're from. If they're from a red state like Lindsey Graham, he can go on Fox and say all the crazy conservative bullshit he wants. But if you're like a purple or a blue state like Cory Gardner is in Colorado, who people think will be able to flip his seat in 2020 because he's a Republican in a blue state, I think he's very nervous about his tone and where he agrees with Trump, because as the midterm showed, these blue states and these purple states overwhelmingly rejected Trumpism. So I think it really just depends on where they're from.
We've seen that he's shifted the focus to just about anything else, and he's made some questionable decisions since the expected but still questionable decisions since the election. How afraid do you think he is right now?
I think he's terrified, and I think that's why you're seeing him react the way he is with these press conferences. I think that's why he immediately wanted to change the narrative the day after the election, because he does not want the Dems to have that message of the country is going back towards them. Like I said, you just look at these midterm results. How did Trump win? He won because, yes, he won Ohio and Florida in 2016, but he also flipped Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. All three of those states went overwhelmingly for the Democrats in their Senate and governor's races. So he literally has no plan. He mathematically can't win right now in 2020 if those three states are moving away from him. And the Democrats are in control of the House, where they can get his tax returns and see his business deals and really protect the Mueller investigation, the Russia investigation. I think he is freaking out because he knows everything's going to come crumbling down soon.
Does he make it to 2020?
Okay, so everybody in the news thinks he will, and the narrative right now, I feel, is that he's going to win re-election easily. Like that's just like the easy narrative to say. I personally don't think he makes it to 2020.
So you think he gets impeached?
No, I think he'll be indicted, and he will either be forced to resign. And if he doesn't resign, then it would go to an impeachment. But I don't think Trump is going to be the nominee in 2020. And I think 2019 is going to be a huge year because we're going to know everything with Mueller by then.
Hopefully.
The indictments are going to be dropped. And 2019 will show, do the Republicans continue the narrative of, it's the deep state out to get him? Or do they finally... Because here's one of the biggest secrets in politics. I'm just going to say it. Republicans know that their base is not intelligent.
Oh, that's harsh.
I'm just going to say it.
Oh, that didn't feel right.
When a Democrat speaks to their constituencies, it's like one-on-one. When a Republican speaks to theirs, it's let me throw them the meat. Let me throw them the red meat, get them all riled up. Yeah, you just keep passing our tax cuts for the wealthy. Because here's the thing, the Republican Party is two parts right now. It's rich elites, and it's rural, poor people who are usually, come from kind of racist areas. And they always vote against their best interests based off the social issues, the scare tactics, the caravans, all that stuff. And I think it just depends on how much longer are these Republicans going to fuel this narrative with their base that Donald Trump's the magic man that came to Washington to fight for the little man? If the Mueller stuff gets worse and they can't keep defending all the crazy shit he does, they're going to have to pull the curtain back and be like, no, this guy's actually an idiot, has no idea what he's doing, and he is corrupt, and you can't support him anymore. But they've been fed the lies and the narrative for so long that I don't know if they would even believe it if Republicans told them that he committed a crime or did something wrong. So I have no idea. I don't know what Fox News is going to do. Are they going to defend Trump? Are they going to smear Mueller when the results come out? I have no idea. That's why next year is going to be so important to see what happens.
Yeah, for the record, for the record, I think that there are some intelligent Republicans out there.
Yes, I'm not saying. Oh, sorry, I'm not saying they all are. I think the Trump base is.
The Trump. Okay, yeah, the Trump base. Yes, you. There has to be a certain lack of. I'm not going to say intelligence, but a lack of information for you to so easily and so readily believe anything that a person tells you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you lived in an area that had a lot of black people or Hispanic people or gay people, and you interacted with them on a somewhat regular basis, you would have the knowledge needed to immediately combat that kind of false rhetoric, right? You would immediately be like, I know that's not true because I know plenty of black people and none of them are like what you're saying. I know a lot of immigrants and they're not rapists and murderers. They're hardworking people who just want a better life for themselves. And you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the support that the Republicans get from their base isn't necessarily from a lack of intelligence as much as it's from a lack of awareness and what's the word I'm looking for? Exposure to people different from them. So, the Republican Party definitely exploits that without a shadow of a doubt.
100%.
They look at these people and think, oh, well, you live in a city in a little town that has like maybe 1,000 people in it tops, and you're 99.9% white. Of course, you're gonna believe that migrant caravan is coming. You know what I mean? It's like, of course, you're gonna believe that these things are happening because it's so far removed from your bubble that it's scary to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I've seen town halls with Republican candidates and Democrat candidates, and it's so fascinating how the Democrat talks to their people versus the Republican talks to their people. It's just so interesting to me. Like, one sounds like they're talking to someone, and the other sounds like they're like almost giving directions, telling a group of people how to think. It's just fascinating to me.
I feel like with the presence of Republicans like Kasich, and with a Democrat-controlled House, I think that now is as good a time as any for us to maybe try to reach across the aisle to some of those more reasonable Republicans, the ones that we have seen kind of on the fence about certain situations, be it for show or not. I'll be interested to see how many people on the right are willing to do the right thing now that some of their seats are safe.
For sure. And like I said earlier in the thing, is like the prescription drug legislation. Let's have the Democrat House and the Republican Senate work together and pass that. If Trump wants to veto it, that'll look terrible, but let's try and work together and get some legislation done that he has to sign. And if he doesn't sign it, then he looks like even more of a piece of shit. Like, we don't have to stop legislating just because, he has the White House or the Senate. Like, now that we have the House, we can really put forward legislation. We can make our messaging better and really try to get things done. Hopefully, we can give people a taste of what it would be like so that when 2020 rolls around, people will want a Democratic Senate and a Democratic White House as well. And we give them a taste of all the stuff that can get done under us.
Thank you so much for joining me once again. I appreciate you coming on to talk to me.
Of course, I love talking politics with you, Dev.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be doing it a lot more often. I've been getting a lot of feedback, and politics seems to be, it's a hot topic that everyone should be invested in. So we'll definitely be covering more politics in the future. Next week, actually, you're going to be back, right?
Yes.
So excited. So tell everyone where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, so again, you can follow me at Matty Monsters with a Z at the end on Twitter. And I look forward to coming back and talking more about the craziness.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. One more music break, and then we'll be right back with an announcement about future episodes of the show. This is Cadmium featuring Grant Dawson with Be With You on Dev Talks.
Hey pretty baby, am I in your way? 'Cause you walked out so fast yesterday. No, I don't think you're here to stay. No, I don't think you're here to stay. So tell me what you want, tell me how you want it. Tell me all the reasons that you're running away. I don't think you're here to stay. No, I don't think you're here to stay. No, no, no. I just wanna be with you. I just wanna be with you. Yeah. I just wanna be with you. Yeah, I just wanna be with you. I just wanna be with you. I just wanna be with you. Yeah. I just wanna be with you. Yeah, I just wanna be with you. I just wanna dance all night. Forget my problems, I might go insane. I don't really give a damn what they say. And now you know it. Hey, little lady said you feel the same, but I don't believe a word you say. 'Cause I don't think you're here to stay. No, I don't think you're here to stay. So tell me what you want, tell me how you want it. Tell me all the reasons that you're running away. I don't think you're here to stay. No, I don't think you're here to stay. No, no, no. I just wanna be with you. I just wanna be with you. Yeah. I just wanna be with you. Yeah, I just wanna be with you. I just wanna be with you. I just wanna be with you. Yeah. I just wanna be with you. Yeah, I just wanna be with you. I just wanna dance all night. Forget my problems, I might go insane. I don't really give a damn what they say. And now you know it. I feel like you're lying. Trying to be real, but you seem so fake. I'm so over trying to move on, but you're in my way. I'm so over trying to move on, but you're in my way. I just wanna be with you. I just wanna be with you. Yeah. I just wanna be with you. Yeah, I just wanna be with you. I just wanna be with you. I just wanna be with you. Yeah. I just wanna be with you. Yeah, I just wanna be with you. I just wanna dance all night. Forget my problems, I might go insane. I don't really give a damn what they say. And now you know it. I just wanna be with you. I just wanna be with you. Yeah. I just wanna be with you. Yeah, I just wanna be with you.
That was Cadmium featuring Grant Dawson with Be With You. And I just want to let everyone know that I very much appreciate all the feedback I've been getting. You guys have been really awesome about letting me know what I'm doing right and sometimes what I'm not doing right. One of the things that I got a lot of feedback on was the day that I upload the show. So from here on out, I want to make it official. The show will be uploaded on Saturdays from here on out. So whether you're listening on Spreaker Podcast Radio, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, the show won't be available until at least Saturday because that's the day that it will be uploaded. Spreaker, you'll be able to get it immediately, Spotify shortly after, and then iTunes and Google Play should be later in the day. But yeah, I really appreciate everyone listening. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Twitter at ThatDamnDevin, and follow the show on Facebook at Dev Talks Podcast. Tune in next week when we'll have more great conversation. Until then, take care and keep talking.
Thanks for listening to Dev Talks. Get the latest Dev Talks news and info by subscribing to the show's Facebook page at Dev Talks Podcast, and by following the show on Spreaker Podcast Radio, YouTube, and Spotify for new episodes every week. This has been Dev Talks, a production of TDR.